and welcome to Musicology for the People. I'm your host, Allison Kaufman, and today I thought we'd talk about 5 pieces of classical music that you probably know. These are pieces that you have heard as the background tracks for commercials, movies, even sportscasts. You recognize them when you hear them. But what are they? I don't know many people who've never heard the Ode to Joy, but I will say that outside of my music friends, people don't realize that it wasn't intended to be an ode to joy at all. The ode comes from the last movement of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, and the poem is written by Friedrich Schiller. Schiller originally wrote the first line as Freiheit, schöne Goethefunken instead of Freude, schöne Goethefunken. This actually means it was originally intended to be an ode to freedom instead of an ode to joy. Now, most of my English-speaking friends will recognize a completely different set of text to go along with the piece. Joyful, joyful, we adore you, God of glory, God of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before you, opening to the sun above. Now let me tell you, my friends, this English version has nothing to do with the original text. The original text is not a hymn to God, it's a hymn to freedom or joy. The original text, accurately translated, is more like joy, beautiful spark of the gods, daughter of Elysium, we, drunk with fire, step into your holy shrine, heavenly one. As you can see, not only does the text not praise God, but it actually talks about the Greek version of religion and mythology and references the Greek version of the afterlife with the possibility of Elysium. Now, this piece is one of the most often performed pieces out there, and it was even included in a bunch of movies I'm sure you've seen. For example, it appears in the Beatles film Help, in Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange, and also in the Die Hard films. It is also the anthem for the European Union and has been played at the opening and closing ceremonies of many, many Olympics. The Ride of the Valkyries, or the Ritt der Valkyrien, is the opening of the 3rd act of the 2nd opera of 4 of Richard Wagner's The Ring Cycle, or Der Ring des Nibelungen. The piece introduces the Valkyries on stage, including Brunhilde, the heroine of the opera. This opera, by the way, took him 26 years to finish. Not surprising when you consider the fact that the opera is 15 hours long. With this opera, Wagner completely revolutionized the way that music was composed in the 19th and 20th centuries. But just because he was revolutionary does not mean he was very well liked. Another famous opera composer from the time, Giacomo Rossini, was very famously quoted as saying that Wagner has wonderful moments, but dreadful quarters of an hour. This piece you will know from a bunch of sources, not least of which from the Bugs Bunny cartoon, What's Opera, Doc? It was also very famously played in the movie Apocalypse Now. It also played a crucial role in the very controversial 1915 film, The Birth of a Nation. It's played when the Ku Klux Klan comes to the rescue of beleaguered white soldiers as they're fighting against newly freed African American slaves. In fact, the piece has a long history of association with racism. It was frequently used as Nazi propaganda during the war, and actually was also played in the film The Blues Brothers when the Nazis are driven off of a bridge. That was pretty funny. Whew, just the opening trill gives me goosebumps. The Toccata and Fugue in D minor by Johann Sebastian Bach had become synonymous with horror and Halloween in Hollywood. Although it's attributed to Bach, there are no autographed manuscripts that survive from his time, which is actually pretty common of a lot of his works. It was published and arranged by Felix Mendelssohn and was published in 1833, which is almost a century after Bach died. Written for organ, it has been covered and arranged for many modern groups, including Deep Purple, Egg, Exception, and Vanessa Mae. Also famously appeared in many classic horror films, including Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, The Phantom of the Opera, The Black Cat, Dr. Gogol, and even Sunset Boulevard. Now, most people associate this with vampires, which is interesting because I can't find any real instances where it's played in a vampire movie. Many people think it's Dracula's theme, but if you actually watch Dracula, you'll see that the music that accompanies him is actually from Swan Lake by Tchaikovsky. Nonetheless, you hear it, you recognize it, now you know what it is. One of the most repetitive pieces I know, Pachelbel's Canon in D major, is composed over a single repeating bass line. So basically you have this song to thank in the trend of many pop songs that only use a few chords and repeat them the same way every time. Johann Pachelbel was a German composer, teacher, and organist in the Baroque period. He's known for developing the choral prelude and fugue, but most interestingly, this is his most famous piece, a canon, and it's the only canon he ever wrote. In fact, musicologists who study Pachelbel often get mad because this is the only piece people know and it completely does not represent the majority of Pachelbel's works. Now, if you're struggling to figure out where you've heard it, you must not be invited to many weddings. The canon is played at almost every wedding, often functioning as the wedding march. It has also been featured in many movies, and not just wedding scenes. It was actually in the cult film Electric Dreams, which was a duet between a human playing cello and an intelligent computer named Edgar. It also played a huge role in Brian Eno's groundbreaking album Discreet Music in 1975. In fact, bands and singers that have used it include Ozzy Osbourne, Fleetwood Mac, Pet Shop Boys, Joe Jackson, Oasis, Celine Dion, Manowar, Belle and Sebastian, and yes, even Britney Spears. There's a great video by comedian Rob Paravonian, and he talks about several of these examples and makes some hilarious jokes about them. I'll post a link to that in the description. Definitely check it out because it's hilarious. The last one I'm going to talk about is actually so famous and recognizable that I already had to make a video entirely about it. You can check that one out, and it's based around O Fortuna from Carmina Burana by Carl Orff. The texts from Carmina Burana were all written between the 11th and 13th centuries, basically by a group of drunk monks. One of the only serious poems set to music in the piece is O Fortuna, which deals with the cycle of luck and misfortune. Oddly, the song has become synonymous with drama, either seriously intended or ironic. It has been seen in those hyper-dramatic Doritos commercials during the Super Bowl. It builds tension during the X Factor, and has been played at the beginning of every Ozzy Osbourne concert. Something you might not know, the composer Carl Orff only died in the 1980s, so he still has a long way to go before he's done earning royalties for this piece. Basically, every time you hear it, his family gets a check. Pretty cool. Again, more on that piece can be found in this video. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned how to recognize some of these very famous pieces in pop culture. As usual, like and subscribe, and be sure to check out the Twitter and Facebook associated with this channel. Until next week, keep your ears open. Musicology.